You have equations for the Big Crunch, the Big Bang, the new universe. Can you explain those?
Yes, as I was developing this theory, I reached a point where, with the different paired forces and the switching of the atomic forces and what have you, and this understanding of gravitation and convolution being cycling forces, sprang forth equations. I mean, they just sort of wrote themselves based on these paired forces. And so we have the Big Crunch complete here, the Big Bang equation, and the new universe. So let's just sort of go through these. They look complex maybe, but they're really kind of very simple. In the Big Crunch complete, what we have is we have the gravitation cycle complete. And that equals one black hole. So all the mass in the universe is in one black hole. And the energy in that mass is at minimal. And the atomic strong force is recessive, weak force dominant, meaning that it's compressed. And that is in parallel with convolution cycle having been complete, which equals a God. And now we have a God with a big G, because all consciousness now is in one peaked energy thought level consciousness. And its thought level is peaked. Its mosaic strong force is recessive, weak force dominant. So you can see there's a parallel between the two, that they're both compressed. But you can see the differential expression that mass is at minimal, consciousness is at peak. And that represents the Big Crunch complete. And that's when mass and consciousness are perfectly overlapped. They're predisposed for the Big Bang. Now, the Big Bang, remember earlier our equation, thought equals consciousness times the speed of light squared. Well, if we look at the very first part of this equation, what we have is we've taken that consciousness, which is now, we're going to put it at the beginning of the equation, multiplied by the speed of light equals the magnitude of the thought. That's how we determine the magnitude of the thought. And that thought has to be in a form, in a third-dimensional form, which in this case is thermal energy. And that's infused into the black hole. Now, normally when energy goes into a black hole, it gets dispelled out, gets pushed out into the universe and ripped apart. But in this case, with both of them being overlapped, the exchange happens so quickly that the black hole is unable to do anything about it. And what we have is we have the overwhelming atomic weak dominant force, which causes the weak recessive. We have essentially our switch in the forces. But now we're moving in the direction of expanding. So now that mass has a strong dominant, and it becomes peaked. What it becomes is it becomes hydrogen, the lightest element with the most energy. And its parallel is that we have consciousness. Through this process of the God consciousness transferring its energy into the mass, that consciousness is reduced to minimal, which we see here with the minus T, its minimal thought, underwhelms the mosaic force. So now we have the switching of the forces, and it becomes expanded again. And both of those substances disperse out into the universe, and that equals the Big Bang. Now, on this equation, I have mass over consciousness, like this. And even though one's at peaked energy and one's at minimal, I still show them this way, because when you have an equation, and let's say you have the number 10 divided by the number 10, it equals 1. Whenever you have two equal amounts of something, they always equal 1. So I go by the basis of the substance of these two dimensions, mass and consciousness, that are equal. So that equals one Big Bang. And so then as we come out into the new universe here, we have the gravitation cycle beginning with mass at peaked energy. It's weak force recessive, strong force dominant, so that it's expanded. We have the convolution cycle beginning, which is consciousness at minimal energy, mosaic strong force dominant. So they're expanded now, and mass is at peaked energy, consciousness is at minimal energy, and they're starting this whole transit, the cycling forces start over again towards compressing mass and consciousness. The whole cycle starts over again.
Well, then part of the Big Bang equation, the part about the magnitude of the thought at rest being recessed into the mass.
Released.
Oh, released into the mass.
Yeah.
Yes, I see.
Yeah,
I see.
you're releasing it just as you would release energy from mass.
Yes, yes. Well, do we have a way of measuring how much that was? In other words, how powerful was the God with a big G we were all once part of?
The magnitude of the thought is proportional to the amount of energy transferred into the mass. So if we're able to estimate the latter, then we'll know the former.
Okay, so you express energy states as peaked or minimal. Does minimal mean there is some energy present?
Yes, since lowest form consciousness in the new universe must have a minimal amount of energy to infuse into single-celled organisms, initiating the symbiotic positive loop exchange between species evolution and consolution, then the parallel is a black hole must also have minimal energy. Therefore, neither mass nor consciousness can be represented as having a zero energy state. The design of the universe is such that there always have a minimal amount of energy in mass and consciousness, so they can easily increase to higher energy levels. Also, if I may add, the first part of the new universe is a long wait, several billion years before life forms first appear. So it's a preferable state to have a minimal level of consciousness with an associated barely perceptible level of thought, as we all wait for single-celled organisms to first appear to infuse our consciousness into.
Makes perfect sense.
It's interesting, isn't it?